That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I'm sure that y'all have seen a lot of mock drafts already, a lot of real money fantasy drafts we've gotten under in this 2022 offseason. We are going to continue, and I promise you, we will have probably 150 drafts on this channel leading up to kickoff this season over there on Underdog Fantasy. Best ball drafts. I mean, you can hop into as many of those as you want. Real money leagues. Don't have to submit your starting lineup. Don't have to work the waiver wire. But, I mean, you can have a ton of fun drafting, make some money like we did last year. And, of course, if you want to draft with us on Underdog Fantasy, you can go out there, use promo code FLOCK. And when you make your first deposit with promo code FLOCK, they will match that deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You will get access to our premium locals content with extra live streams, Q&A sessions, our 2022 fantasy football rankings, our dynasty rankings. You'll get our dynasty fantasy football research book that we just released this offseason. You can find the link for that in the description of the video. You can find that down in the comment section. But here, I want to prepare everybody hopping into those drafts, prepare everybody with some wide receiver rankings. And we're going to go as deep as we can in this video. Y'all know it's not my style just to throw 30 rankings at you and say, do with this what you want. I'm only going to talk about these players for 30 seconds. Instead, I'd rather dive a little bit deeper on each guy, even if we can't get through as many, because, I mean, hell, it's March. We have a lot of time to talk about every single one of these players, so I want to cover these guys in depth. Let's go and do it. Let's lead it off with our first wide receiver. Not much to discuss, if we're going to be completely honest. I mean, what am I supposed to say here? We got Cooper Kupp at 1. If you were looking at Cooper Kupp this past year, I have to admit, I had Robert Woods ranked over him. Last season, I had Robert Woods ranked over Cooper Kupp, just to let you know how dumb I was, because you have Cooper Kupp coming out, finishes as the wide receiver 1. Not only the wide receiver 1 overall, but he finishes ahead of every running back from a points per game standpoint. He goes out there, pretty much matches Davante Adams from 2020, when Davante Adams in 2020 was averaging 1.3 touchdowns per game. Cooper Kupp matched that on a fantasy points per game standpoint. He had 114 receiving yards, 11 targets, almost an entire touchdown, all on a per game basis. And one thing that I'm really going to highlight with this video, I mean, especially with the couple players coming up, is going to be looking at that touchdown rate that's going to be extremely volatile season to season and saying, okay, should we expect this player to possibly take a step back with how frequently he's scoring touchdowns? And if so, where should we reasonably rank him? Here, Cooper Kupp was scoring, a touchdown on 8.3% of his targets. That is sustainable. That is something you can continue to see from Cooper Kupp. Now, with the emergence or the addition of Allen Robinson in this offense, I am not worried whatsoever, because if you look at how Allen Robinson will operate, he's going to be playing on the outside. Cooper Kupp, we know he makes his money over the middle of the field. They are natural complements to each other, especially when you have Van Jefferson with the elite speed stretching the field, allowing Cooper Kupp to have that space to work underneath. I think that the Rams are set up to be in a perfect spot this upcoming season. Don't know if they're going to bring back Odell Beckham Jr. Doesn't really matter considering how late in the year he had his injury. And if they were to bring him back near the end of the season, then all of a sudden, he probably slides into the Van Jefferson role and probably takes some touchdowns away, but nothing crazy with the volume. If we take a step back, look at Cooper Kupp, he's had a top 10 finish before. Go back to 2019. He finished as the wide receiver 8 on a per game basis. It is funny that he took that step back in 2020, but I think we can almost just chalk that up to how bad Jared Goff was. Cooper Kupp, lock and load, wide receiver 1, nothing to talk about. Now, our second wide receiver, I know we're probably going to get some pushback for this. And if you are in an underdog fantasy draft, you are going to see that JaMarr Chase is going off the board as the second wide receiver in pretty much every single one. I initially had JaMarr Chase ranked at wide receiver 2 here, but after digging a little bit deeper with these metrics, I'm going to go out there and throw in Justin Jefferson instead. Now, Justin Jefferson, I mean, if we're looking at what he did this past season, he finished as the wide receiver 4 on a points per game standpoint. And I know all the talk was about JaMarr Chase. Of course, JaMarr Chase should have been across every newspaper headline. He should have been leading off every single video last year with the elite rookie season breakout that he had. But if you're looking at weeks 1 through 16 on a points per game standpoint, in 2021, JaMarr Chase, the wide receiver 11, and that, for whatever reason, has overshadowed what Justin Jefferson was able to accomplish his rookie season and his sophomore year. I mean, Justin Jefferson, his rookie season, wide receiver 11 as well, then jumps up to being a top 5 option this past season. We've already seen it, and this looks very sustainable to me. Because if we're looking at Justin Jefferson, a lot of this production has primarily been driven off of the volume that he is seeing in Minnesota and how efficient he is on a yards per target standpoint, which is a lot stickier than what you're going to see with their touchdown rate. And here with Justin Jefferson, I mean, he actually went from 7.8 targets his rookie season to 9.8 targets per game his sophomore year. His touchdowns jumped slightly, but you have seen back-to-back seasons Justin Jefferson to hover around the 5.5 to 6% touchdown rate. That is 100% sustainable. And if anything, given the talent and the efficiency Justin Jefferson provides, we could see him even build on this touchdown rate. He doesn't need to get that many more targets in Minnesota. You have Kirk Cousins coming back. You don't have a significant wide receiver 2 now that Adam Thielen is aging out. Possibly some of that usage in the red zone goes over to Justin Jefferson instead. If we can get that touchdown rate up to 8-9%, which I think is doable based on the elite wide receiver talent that Justin Jefferson has. Of course, it's hard to project a receiver to have a 9% touchdown rate, but it's in the range of outcomes. Give me Justin Jefferson, still incredibly young. I mean, gonna be the alpha wide receiver in his own offense. We'll take him at 2. We're going to have JaMarr Chase at 3. I understand that this isn't that impactful. I mean, they're very close. Here with JaMarr Chase, if you're looking at his touchdown rate in particular, 10.15%. That has to come down to earth a little bit. I think what you're probably going to end up seeing is the touchdowns are going to remain relatively the same for JaMarr Chase on a per game basis, but we should assume that JaMarr Chase will be able to command more volume going forward in Cincinnati. However, I will give out the warning that this is a team that does have T. Higgins. You're going to hear about T. Higgins a little bit later on. This is a team that also significantly invested in the offensive line, which should improve the overall offense. Maybe, just maybe. I'm not saying this is going to be the case. I mean, we haven't seen Zach Taylor decide to do this so far with this Cincinnati Bengals offense. But maybe if you can see a big jump up with their rushing efficiency, they don't ask Joe Burrow to drop back as much as they did this past season, especially if they're going to be in more favorable game flows and they're not going out there and just getting into full-blown shootouts, catching up on teams like the Kansas City Chiefs in the second half. So I am still projecting JaMarr Chase to take a step forward from his rookie season. And he just put up one of the best rookie seasons of all time. However, if we just look at the numbers here, he was the wide receiver 11. He did only average 7.5 targets per game compared to Justin Jefferson getting up there closer to 10. So while, yes, I am projecting JaMarr Chase to take that step forward, we've already seen it with Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has no target competition where Chase does have the combination of both T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So we're going to have JaMarr Chase at 3. I don't feel like we have to argue about that too much. Going over to 4, this is where we're probably going to get some more debate because as of now, Stefon Diggs is going as the wide receiver 8 over there on Underdog. But looking at this tier of options, I think Stefon Diggs has to sit at the top. Now, of course, I will say you are going to have a considerable fall off from the wide receiver 3 with JaMarr Chase down to Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs, a little bit of an older wide receiver at this point, drafted in 2015, but still, he was drafted very young. So Stefon Diggs should still be in the prime of his career. Why I personally am going to be taking Stefon Diggs is primarily based on the offense he's playing in. And of course, being attached to Josh Allen is going to help him out a ton. He's had back-to-back finishes as a top 10 receiver on a per game basis. Now, what's weird is his yards per target took a drastic dip this past season. I mean, you actually saw the targets overall remain relatively the same. He had about 10.3 his first year over there in Buffalo, fell down to 9.6 this past season. But you actually had, I mean, his receiving yardage on a per game basis go down from 96 to 72. And that's going to be a red flag. The touchdown rate came up a little bit, which offset this fall off, which allowed him to maintain as a top 10 wide receiver. I honestly think that Stefon Diggs is in line for a little bit of a bounce back, because if you just look at this offense on the whole, I mean, we don't necessarily know exactly what we are going to expect when you lose out on Cole Beasley, replace him with Jamison Crowder. Looks like they have very similar skill sets, but still, you may not have the chemistry there with Josh Allen and Jamison Crowder. This is an offense that I wouldn't even mind if they went out there and drafted a wide receiver in the first round. I know not many people are expecting that, but with Emmanuel Sanders, with Cole Beasley not really having the same impact they did last year, this team does have a hole at receiver. I know Gabriel Davis is obviously going to slide up. Gabriel Davis, a little more of a field stretching option than he is actually going to be a player that can command a volume. So I think that Stefon Diggs is going to be playing in one of the best offenses in the NFL. He has the rapport with his quarterback currently. He has back-to-back top 10 finishes on a per game basis at the position. So I'm going to take Stefon Diggs at the top of this here. Yes, we're pushing down Davante Adams. We're pushing down Tyreek Hill behind Stefon Diggs, despite both those wide receivers on underdog currently being drafted ahead of him. It is what it is, though. Let's go over to our next guy. This is going to be someone that I historically have not been a massive fan of, but at this point, Deebo Samuel is someone I am considering ranking above Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill. I know it's disgusting. I understand. Not many people agree with the sentiment, and this will be something I want to know your opinion on. I truly, truly would love to hear your opinion in the comment section. Deebo Samuel currently being drafted as the wide receiver 7. I'm ranking him here as the wide receiver 5. Now, with Deebo, it's really, really hard to look at any historical trends, to look at really any metrics and project those going forward based on him playing a position we're not used to seeing. How many wide receivers have been going out there and leading their team in carries just randomly throughout the season? Now, with Deebo Samuel, if you were looking at his total yards per game, 110 this past season. He had 110 total yards per game, only behind Cooper Kupp. Now, with the transition over to Trey Lance, I don't think it's going to be great for Deebo. I am worried about Trey Lance, specifically vulturing touchdowns at the goal line. Deebo Samuel had, on average, 0.87 touchdowns on a per game basis this past season. I'm going to imagine that number is coming down based on the emergence of Trey Lance. As we talk through this, knowing that Lance also is going to be able to scramble and doesn't have to look for those options that are closer to the line of scrimmage, I apologize. I can't do it. I can't do it. Cut it here. We're moving Deebo Samuel down. We're going to have Davante Adams at 5. I wanted to get cute with it. I understand Davante Adams is changing teams. Davante Adams is going to be 30. This is not a spot that you want to be in. You don't want to be going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. You don't want to be going from Allen Lazard and Robert Tonyan as your biggest threats to your workload to all of a sudden competing for targets with the combination of Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. Davante Adams is now older than he's ever been, obviously, and he's had worse quarterback play than he's ever had, and he has more target competition than he's ever had in his NFL career as well. So looking at the 3-year mark we have from Davante Adams in 2019, 2020, and 2021, gonna be very deceiving. If you're looking at this, the wide receiver 2 this season, the wide receiver 1 in 2020, the wide receiver 6 in 2019, he's going out there and, just dominating target volume. He's had almost 10 targets per game every single year over the past 3. And if you're looking at his average over the past 3, it is over 10 targets a game over the past 3 seasons. He's out there averaging over 90 receiving yards a game over the past 3. He's out there averaging, close to 12 touchdowns a season. In 2020, he had 1.28 touchdowns per game. He is the best red zone threat in the NFL. He is a dominant receiver. If y'all remember, last year, I had Davante Adams at my 103. I was telling people to take Davante Adams over Ezekiel Elliott, over Derrick Henry. Thank God Henry got injured, or that would have been horrendous. I was more aggressive on drafting Davante Adams in the first, Joe Mixon in the second. That was our go-to strategy. I love me some Davante Adams. I'm hesitant to rank him as high as his ADP is, however, just because these changes are not going to be good. Historically speaking, wide receivers changing teams overall, it's not a good spot to be in, especially if you're going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, or if you're going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa. So I hate to say this. I hate to give this cop-out answer. I'm going to be looking at a tier of Deebo, Davante, Tyreek Hill, all in the same tier for me. I probably break it Davante 1, Deebo 2, Tyreek 3. Now, with Tyreek Hill currently being drafted as the wide receiver 5 on Underdog, I currently have him ranked as the wide receiver 7, as we mentioned, right in line with those other options. And with Tyreek Hill, over the past 3 years, this is a wide receiver that's had a top 10 finish every single season. But you're going over to an offense where we can presumably assume you are going to be used as the vertical element in the Tua Tagovailoa offense. I am personally worried that Jalen Waddle is going to be the guy that can actually get those crossing routes. That's going to be getting those dump offs that are going to be so valuable from Tua. And with Tyreek Hill, we are going to have an impossible time trying to separate how good Tyreek is himself versus Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, because clearly Tyreek Hill is an extreme level outlier. If you go back to his prospect profile, if you just look at his size speed combination, how many players like that are working out in the NFL right now? Serious question. I understand that. They are very valuable for NFL offenses. Having that elite level speed, I hate to say it, of course, but Henry Ruggs is always the go-to example in that 2020 draft. When you have Henry Ruggs get drafted over CeeDee Lamb, when you have him get drafted, over options like Jerry Jeudy that everybody had ranked ahead of him, it's not because the Raiders thought all of a sudden he was going to be commanding a lot of volume. It's because just having that speed on the outside is going to open up your entire offense underneath. I'm a little bit worried that this Miami Dolphins team is not going to be able to use Tyreek Hill as creatively as Andy Reid and Mahomes were able to consistently get him volume. Over the past 2 seasons, he had over 9 targets a game, which is exactly what you're looking for, because Tyreek Hill will be one of the most efficient receivers in the NFL, or at least he was when he was attached to Patrick Mahomes. I'd love to know your opinion. I'm personally probably a little bit more worried about Tyreek Hill making the transition just because he is such a unique wide receiver overall compared to Davante Adams. That's why we are going to have Davante higher. And now let's go to our next option. This is going to be CeeDee Lamb. Now with CeeDee Lamb, a wide receiver that the overall fantasy football community was probably too high on last year and probably too high on the year before. But now you're looking at him as the alpha wide receiver in an offense where he's really never had the opportunity to be just that. You have Amari Cooper going over to Cleveland. Excited to talk about Amari Cooper later this offseason. Interested to see where y'all are going to be drafting him with us on our live streams. But as it stands, CeeDee Lamb's never been a target hog. His rookie season, he averaged 6.9 targets per game. His sophomore year, he averaged 7.5. He was the wide receiver 16 on a per game basis this past year. But CeeDee Lamb is still incredibly young. Let me look this up to make sure I'm not leading y'all down the wrong path. But I believe CeeDee Lamb, let's look it up before I say it. I want to say CeeDee Lamb's still younger than Jalen Waddle. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's younger than Jalen Waddle. He hit the NFL draft right after turning 21 years old. It's a player that declared early out of OU. I know that he has possibly been one of the more disappointing wide receivers if you actually look at the production over the past 2 years compared to what people speak on CeeDee Lamb as. But still, the Dallas Cowboys were number 1 overall with their points scored this past season. They were top 5 with the passing volume in this offense. Amari Cooper split that wide receiver 1 role with CeeDee Lamb. Amari Cooper, no longer there. Michael Gallup, very serious injury at the very end of the season this past year. So CeeDee Lamb, going into his age 23 season, is all of a sudden going to be the dominant alpha wide receiver one in one of the league's best offenses. I think this is exactly what you're looking for CeeDee Lamb to take that elite jump. But also, I think that's probably where we're going to cut this video. Of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. If you want access to all our rankings, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you make your first deposit. You will get all of that, including so much more. And also, make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Hope to be drafting with y'all sometime soon. Can't wait to get all these going.